Welcome back everybody on the channel. This is Stefan on the French Cooking Academy, and this week, to complete our series of videos on sauces, I wanted to talk about French sauces classification. But I'm not talking about the old list of mother sauces that everybody kind of know, because in fact this list is a bit of a relic from the past that is not really used anymore in modern kitchen. So today I'm going to share with you what is the current way you can classify French sauces, what are the new things that come up, what are the differences, so that we have a great picture of what is really current as of today. Let's go. So let's talk about sauces classification, and I'm sure that when I mention the word sauces in French cooking, the first thing that pops in your mind might be, oh, the list of famous mother sauces. And everybody wants to know what exactly belongs to that list, etc., etc. And you know, what is good, a good debate over a dinner, or maybe, you know, to have a video on YouTube. In fact, this is just something from the past. It is a bit of a relic. It's a piece of history that you should know when you're a student. You need to know how to make the sauce the classic way. But in fact, when you go into a modern restaurant, you will see that this classification is just not used anymore. There's some reminiscence of it, but things have changed. This is with the sort of Nouvelle Cuisine, mainly in the 1980s, where really chefs have ditched the flour, all the heavy stuff in the sauces, and they start to transform the sauces themselves. And they reclassified, they remade a new way of classifying all of the sauces, not just a bunch of 5 sauces. And this is what we're going to see in this episode. Now, one of the other questions I'm getting all the time is, are you a trained chef? Is Stefan from the French Cooking Academy a trained chef? Did he do a school or something like this? Does he have a background with a culinary school? And I'd like to answer that question with, yes, I've got many schools, and I've got here one right now. This is one of my schools. It is about 1,000 pages long, and it's called the Larousse Gastronomique. When it comes to getting your facts right when you want to do cooking, this is a great reference book. That deal, I quote here, which is the world reference for anything that revolves around cooking and the world of chef. So what we're going to do, to start with, we're going to open the book and look at the page on sauces, see what this thing is telling us. Welcome to school, everyone. So this is the kind of activity I'm doing, you know, off camera. You know, I have always learned from these books. And here's the section sauces. You can see plenty of nice pictures, and you can see here sauces, right? So that's going to deal with a lot of things about the different sauces, blah, blah, blah. But what really interests us is actually here. This is the little explanation of the new sauces classification, with here some types of sauce that you can make. So let's focus on this one. So on the chart, the most important I want to show you is this here, where it says sauce mère, which is actually referring to mother sauces. And here is the sauce dérivée, which means the derivatives. So what's changed in terms of the classification already is that the classic list is gone, but we still use as a reminiscent of the name mother sauces that now refers to as, let's say, the main sauce you use, where you base things upon. And you see there's a big list. And then you got the derivatives. So you still have this as a little reference point. But what is the rest of the classification saying? So let's have a closer look. The table goes as follows. Sauce blanche à base de fond blanc de veau, fond blanc de volaille, fumet de poisson ou le lait, sauce béchamel. Sauce brune à base de fond brun de volaille, fond brun de volaille, fond de gibier, crustacés, tomates fraîches, concentré de tomates et tomates fraîches. Les sauces émulsionnées chaudes, donc béarnaise, hollandaise émulsionnée, plus les sauces émulsionnées froides, donc la mayonnaise et bien sûr la vinaigrette, qui est une sauce émulsionnée froide instable. And this is what it sounds like when you read this in French, but of course it's not going to help you. So let's move on to the English version that I've made from our sauce course. And here we are, the modern classification of French sauces. It is better in English, because in French it can be really convoluted. And this is an extract from our sauce course, by the way, because people ask me all the time, is the course the same as the YouTube video? No, the course is the course, and the YouTube video is something different. These are the kinds of stuff we go into the latest advanced course on French sauces. So as you can see in front of you here, the list, and the so-called list of mother sauce, you know, this list of 5 sauce, you know, the hors de velouté, the béchamel, etc. Where is it? It's gone. It's not there at all anymore. What you see in yellow there is what replaces this kind of mother sauce. This is what I've shown you on the chart before. And the classification now is very simple. It goes first by color. So you got on one hand, from the left-hand side, the white sauces, and that regroup any sauce that are using a white stock, or milk, or a fish fumé. Okay, so you don't need anymore to know, oh, is it that sauce part of it or part of that? No. Anything that's using a white stock, a fish fumé or milk, is part of the white sauces. After that, brown sauces. Anything you make, regardless of the sauce, if it's using a brown stock, being a veal stock, a chicken stock, a game stock, and even crustaceous, and sometimes with a base of tomato, is now going to fall onto the brown sauces category. Okay, so you could see these are mother sauces. You know, the mother sauce number one would be white sauce, and then brown sauce. Then comes the emulsified sauces. Okay, that they use the technicality of how the sauce is made, using an emulsification process, which is try to combine two ingredients that usually don't combine together when you whisk them vigorously. And you've got on one end the warm emulsified sauces, and then on the other hand the cold emulsified sauces. So once again, you don't need to break your head on trying to find, oh, is the hollandaise part of the mother sauce or not? We see, as you can see here, warm emulsified sauces, anything that use the emulsification or sabayon, such as the béarnaise, the hollandaise, but also the butters, like the beurre blanc we've seen last week, are now part of that one and only category because it's a warm emulsion. Okay? On the other side, you got the cold emulsified sauces, and you see the mayonnaise and the vinaigrette. This is all the dressing that exists. So anything that's cold fits now in there. And it's interesting because the mayonnaise was gone for the list of mother sauce, and people say, oh, it should be there. Like Escoffier said, oh, the mayonnaise used to be in the mother sauces, now is back at the front, and because it's an emulsified sauce, you can see it there as a cold emulsified sauce. The last and newcomer is the sweet sauces category. Okay, you got cold sauces, so talk about fruit coulis. Then you got warm sauces, anything like chocolate sauce, salted caramel sauce. And the new stuff, more like a Heston Blumenthal style thing, you know, the foams and mousses. This is something you would learn at school. What are the foams you can make and their derivative, right? This is the reality of the sauce world. So you can see it can be quite complex, but in a nutshell, what you just need to keep in mind is that the old list of mother sauce that used to exist, okay, with the 5 sauces, is now changed with the things in yellow in there. Number 1, white sauces. Number 2, brown sauces. Number 3, warm emulsified sauces. Number 4, cold emulsified sauces. And number 5, sweet sauces. And to finish, I'm going to show you a little slide just to tell you what are the sauces that used to be popular, like the Espagnole, that are now actually also not used anymore at all. And now for this last slide, I've kind of used this to try to recreate a lookalike of the old kind of classification, you know, of the mother sauces and how things would have changed in modern standards. So you can still take the bechamel as a mother sauce and all the derivative below. You can have the velouté on there with all of the derivative below. But then on number 3, you usually would have the Espagnole sauce. And the Espagnole sauce, in fact, in pretty much every restaurant is absolutely not used anymore. Now, it's still a great thing to know how to make. This is what we've taught on our basic course, how to make a sauce Espagnole. But the reality is that now the newcomer is the use of a jus or a demi-glace. You may have heard a lot of videos online talking about the demi-glace, okay? And this is now the replacement of the actual Espagnole sauce. I would say, to be honest, the jus is actually the real replacement. The demi-glace is kind of something you can use for pan sauces and for certain things, but the jus is actually something that is very important that we'll cover just when we finish with this. Next, what I want to talk about is the tomato sauce. The old tomato sauce that used to use flour and bacon, and why it was really good, it was also very heavy. Now, still exists at the top of the chart, but it is now preferred and has been replaced by new and lighter versions. So the concassé de tomate, semi-dried cooked tomatoes, the coulis de tomate, like a cooked tomato coulis, or even the coulis cru, which is the raw tomato coulis, are the 3 predominant sauces and main sauces, the tomato-based sauces that are used in restaurants. Okay, again, hardly anyone uses the old-fashioned tomato sauce. It has just become something from the past. The hollandaise hasn't changed, and it's still the same thing here, and you have all of the derivatives. So this is just a sample that I've tried to recreate to give you an idea how things have changed. And what I'm going to talk about here to really finish that little introduction on this classification of sauces is to talk about the jus that you see here and answer the question that a lot of people have been commenting in some of my video. You know, I'm trying to make a lookalike of a jus, and it uses a base of stock to make something that looks another stock. So it's like, are we making stock using stock? Well, not exactly, and I'm going to clarify this right now with this slide. Now to finish, let me touch on the sauce making process. Many of you have been commenting, I think in some cases when I was doing my chicken chasseur, that I was actually using a off-the-shelf stock, and I was pouring this into chicken carcasses that were browning, and people said, what? Making a stock to make a stock? I called it a stock at the time, but you know, when you make this kind of process, you make what is commonly called, you know, a demi-glace, but it's like a bit of a home-style kind of demi-glace. But in restaurants, in fact, you're making what's called a jus. That's the middle thing you see here on the screen. So what is the process? A stock is in fact just the foundation of a sauce. Okay, so it's very thin. And so you have a brown stock. It's got the flavors. It's got some colors, but it's very thin. It's not reduced. It's not thick. So when you make sauces, you don't just like have stock on your side and pour it in a pan and boom, you have a sauce. And it doesn't work that way. In the professional world, the way it works when you make sauces is that you use a good quality stock, okay? And with that, you're gonna make a jus. What is a jus? It is simple meat trimmings, chicken carcasses, chicken wings that are seared in there with a mirepoix, you know, of carrots, of onion, and then you're gonna add your stock, maybe some tomato paste. Some people add a bit of wine, a bit of flour, some garlic, and kind of you know, a few mushrooms. You can flavor it with different alcohol. It can be red wine, white wine, Madeira, port, whatever. And then you're gonna reduce the heck out of that concoction, okay? And that stock is gonna become more flavorsome. It's gonna become darker. It's gonna have new flavor into it. And when you reduce the heck out of it, it's gonna become semi-syrupy. And that is what's called a jus. It is the most used product in modern kitchen, and this is the thing that replaces the Espagnole in bracket. When I say it replaces the Espagnole in the sense of popularity. Before, the Espagnole was the go-to sauce base for everything, and now in restaurant, the jus is the newcomer. So you've got obviously chicken jus, veal jus, lamb jus, pork jus, whatever you can make with it. But once you've got a jus in the kitchen, you can then use that to further improve it and make a beautiful sauce. This is just to touch base on the process. But that's it, that completes this video with the new classification. Sorry about the long talk and the explanation, but there's no real way of going really simple. But just keep in mind, as we've seen before, that list of mother sauces is a bit of a relic. It's good to know it, but if you're really interested into cooking, keep in mind that things have totally changed. So it is good to live in the modern era and still believe that, you know, French cooking is not just that old kind of museum piece that never changes. Because when you go into a kitchen and you explore a bit what's happening in the world of chefs, even in French cooking, you realize that things have drastically opened, drastically changed. It is all about the food from the world, not just France. And we all embrace cooking, and this is what's important. So I will leave you with this, and I will see you next week with another video on the French Cooking Academy. Take care all. Bye-bye.